Good evening, everybody, and a very warm welcome to our fourth, but sadly our last scheduled virtual wine tasting of 2020. When the committee were putting together the finishing touches on the 2020 programme, we had no idea or any thoughts about virtual wine tastings. So this came as a bit of a surprise. So what I'd like to do this evening is give you an update on the Wine Society and share with you the committee's thoughts as we look forward to next year. Don't worry, Selborne's answer to the Chuckle Brothers, Ian O'Donnell and Roger Hart will be coming along very shortly. The first thing I wanted to say is that the committee is delighted that these virtual wine tastings have been so well received by you. It seems that they have successfully plugged the gap following the suspension of the Phileas Fogg inspired programme for 2020. When the idea of virtual tasting was first raised, I was sceptical that the committee could deliver on this, let alone see the high standard that we have all enjoyed. And this is when Nick Willoughby came to our rescue. Thankfully, it is Nick that has been behind all of the technical aspects of these tastings. And without Nick, it wouldn't have been possible. So Nick, if you're listening out there, if not, I'm talking to myself, but on behalf of the Wine Society, a big thank you from all of us. Looking ahead to next year, who knows what this will bring? I wish I knew, but as far as the Wine Society is concerned, our plan is to reintroduce the Phileas Fogg programme in its entirety. The rationale behind this is that a lot of work had gone into organising the programme and it contains many of our favourite presenters. We've already booked in the majority of these presenters with the exception of Andrew Steele and Emma Heap, who could not commit, plus Will Clement and Joe Black, who completed a tasting in 2020. This has provided us with the opportunity to introduce three brand new presenters, the Hawkins brothers, Simon and James, who run a wine outlet at Secrets Farm Shop in Milford, Pamela Gregory, who is the co-founder of Hannibal Brown, a wine events company based in South London. In the past, Pamela was a wine buyer for many chains of restaurants, including All Bar One, Harrods, and the Queen's Cellar. And finally, there was Anthony Field Johnson, who heads up the fine wine team at Metzendorf, an upmarket wine shipper based in the City of London, which is owned by Bollinger. With this reshuffle, I believe that we have been able to strengthen our lineup for next year. It's all very exciting and I can't wait. We won't be rolling out the Phileas Fogg tastings until it is safe for us to do so. We think this is unlikely to be in January 2021. So if this happens to be April 2021, the programme will run for a year from April 2021 to March 2022. This will leave a gap at the start of the year, and we are already in discussions with the Wakes to hold a joint food and wine event, maybe in January. We will keep you informed of this. But if you have any ideas, please let a member of the committee know. That's enough from me. All it remains to say is stay safe, continue to enjoy your wine, and we look forward to welcoming you back into the Wine Society in the Village Hall. So from me, cheers.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome. We live in Selborne and belong to the Selborne Wine Society. This is the most powerful and successful society in the village, surpassing even the 6 o'clock club at the Selborne Arms. So successful is our society that EHDC sends out extra heavy-duty garbage trucks to collect the empties.
Especially at Morphe's. I look up to him, not because he lives in Gracious Street, where fine wine appreciation is mandatory, because he really understands wine. But I look down on him because he's a beer drinker.
I like my beer, but I look up to him because he knows his Bordeaux's from his clarets. But we both look up to him because we can't afford his wines.
I'm glad that the lower orders have some appreciation of wine, although what they drink is something I would rather put on my French fries. But in reality, I look down on him because he can't afford the wines that I enjoy and probably wouldn't appreciate them anyway. But I really look down on him because he drinks beer.
I like my beer, especially from Gilbert White's brew house.
I look up to him because he can afford Luddite and Saboteur and Shirazes, wines I can only buy for special occasions. Rumour has it that he possesses a bottle of Dom Perignon 53, just like James Bond.
Well, actually, James Bond's favourite was the Talented Blanc de Blanc's Brut 43, but hey, what would I know?
I look down on them, for I have evolved a prodigious nose over the generations. Not only is this useful for looking down, but its sensitivity is rivaled only by the olfactory organs of the bloodhound. When I pull the cork from a bottle, I never unscrew anything, nor heaven forbid flip off a crown top. I can tell you the year, the grape, and the slope of the vineyard.
I can tell if it's red or white, but only with my eyes open.
We all appreciate wines according to our station, and although I might look up to him, I know that at least 10% of his very, very expensive wines will be corked.
We're very lucky to live in Selborne, that has such an active and inclusive wine society. They even accept beer drinkers.
On sufferance.
And we all look down on the other societies because they really don't have as much fun as we do. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
So, Ian, geographically, isn't Gracious Street lower than the rest of the village?
Roger, please don't go there. Don't go there, Roger.
Well, wasn't the poorhouse in Gracious Street?
Roger, people have been shot for less for saying that in Maltbys and in Selborne and in Lower Maltbys. So please, let's move on quickly. I'm going now to pass over to Roger to start the tasting.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that, and cheers. Right. Thank you particularly to John Elder, who was responsible for the skullduggery behind that. Mostly, a little bit of ad-libbing, but there we go. So on to the tasting. Tonight we've got, for the final evening, a slightly different approach to how we've put everything together. And it is, a lot of it's going to be, probably because Nick had a few stresses with the South African Wi-Fi, which was obviously driven by a zebra connected to a bar being chased by a lion. So this time I can assure that everything is going to be spot on. And to go with that, we've got another of our favourite presenters in Mark Bedford, who has been with us since 2003. Was your first tasting, Mark? Incredible.
Wow.
You don't look that old.
2003.
And this,
2003.
if we call this a tasting, this is your 11th tasting that you've taken part in. There's been some quite memorable tastings, I understand, including guitars and serenading the members. Your head-to-heads with Phil Barnett are legendary. I do think that's standing at 1-1 at the moment, though. I think if
I
I've
think
read
it
it right,
is. Yeah.
yeah, we maybe
I
need
think
to
there
do
were.
we need to do a decider with that, maybe.
that
So,
would be fun.
quick bit about Mark. Mark's his CV. I'm not sure I believe all of this actually, but it's school teacher, sports coach. We won't ask which sport that you were coaching, and soldier. And probably, and this is, I think you're probably going to tell me this is where the love of wine came. You were a tour guide for a Spanish wine producer. Now, that's not a bad mixed CV. When they say you're going to have 3 job changes in your life, you've certainly matched that. And you've been buying and selling wine apparently for over 25 years. So, and
Well,
most
more than
recently,
that, I think I need to update. I need to update that little thing on the website. It's kind of the one thing I don't read.
I did. That's where I get all my info. So, anyway, now owner of Caviste. If anyone hasn't been to the Caviste shop at Newlands, I have to say I hadn't been to the new layout, and wow, you've got a lovely little spot, little emporium, I think you call it, tucked around the corner. And Newlands Farm is a fantastic place to visit for a morning. So if anybody's looking for something to do, trot over there and have a look. But 2 shops and thriving, I understand. So, Mark, do you want to tell us a bit about Caviste and how it started, maybe, and your ethos there?
Yeah. It's one of the first questions people sometimes ask about Caviste is how do I say it and what does it mean? And some of us in some of those in the Selborne Wine Society remember the origins of Caviste, a company called the Cellar Door, and then when we started expanding, I was working for a company called Berry Brothers when the Cellar Door was founded, and then I, in a fit of madness, I left the sort of world of sound employment and joined just the youngest underfunded startup in the UK because I wanted excitement. I had 2 small children and a wife. I mean, just the craziest thing. But I did it. And because I just felt I wasn't being very exciting with my professional life. And but just going back to why Caviste, when we started expanding the company, we had about 200 names, which we had written down. There was a group of us, and Caviste is the French for a small wine merchant, essentially, and it can either describe the place or it can describe the person. And we thought, yeah, that's cool. And no one had kind of ring fenced the word in the UK. So Caviste means wine merchant, small wine merchant. Imagine a Frenchman with a berry in his little carve and his bottles, and kind of there's been various changes along the years, and I only came really into the possession of Caviste in 2016, and it wasn't something that I expected when I left the world of big employment. I thought I would only ever be the sort of a junior partner in a bigger show, and things happen. People come, people go, and it's really the most delightful thing to be able to operate this Hampshire business and representing small wineries. And people ask me what I do, and I say, well, I buy and sell flavor, and I sell stories. That's what I do at a sort of fairly, at a kind of deep level. And then above that, wine is what I do. And people ask me if I get bored, and I never get bored with wine. People ask me what my favorite wine is, and I give them a different answer every time. It's ever changing. And hey, I've been talking for long enough. Oh, back to you, Roger.
Well, that's fine. You look quite good in a beret, I have to say, Mark. It probably would suit you. But so, I know we're in delight tonight. We've got 3 cracking wines. Hopefully, everybody has got the first wine open, the white wine, and into the glass. Now, this is where things are going to go a little bit different to normal. So, why bother going to Newlands Corner when we can take you there now? So, Mark, let's have a look at the first wine.
Good evening, Selborne. Welcome to Friday evening, and it's a pleasure to be with you again. I cannot see you. You can see me, but again, it's lovely to be with you. I should be saying, isn't it nice to see me again? Yeah. But we're going to taste these 3 wines together. That you've already had a little bit of a preview, although there has been one change because one of the wines has been selling rather well. It's the German Pinot Noir, and we've got to wait another week to 10 days for the next shipment to arrive. So tonight we are tasting the Bologna, that some of you may remember from our little preview video from Lazio, just near Rome. We are going to taste the other Italian, the Primitivo from the opposite coast, southeast Italy in Puglia. And then instead of the German Pinot Noir, I've kind of completely changed tack, and we're going for a Bordeaux blend from South Africa, because I know how much you like the kind of full-bodied red wines. And by the time we do this tasting, it is probably going to be autumn. The leaves are going to be slightly more brown. In Selborne. I drove through Selborne a week or so ago, and it is so beautiful. You live in such a special place, just to remind you how lucky you are to live there. So anyway, we are going to start with our Bologna. So let's just get that in our glass, and I am going to sort of bounce around a little bit, and I do want to tell you about the Zalto glass, because this is such a cool glass. I know many of you have got little ISOs or maybe even a Riedel. This is the thing, the Zalto glass that's hand blown in Austria. It's lead-free crystal, and it weighs nothing. It is so delicate. Actually, before I open it, I just want to, you can. It's as light as a feather, and you think that's just going to break if I look at it. But you can look at that. You see, it's sort of. It's pretty resilient, and note also the straight sides. They're not rounded. The idea is there are 2 things to say here. Is that angle, as many of you will know, is the same angle as the axis of the Earth. Yeah. So that has a major effect on the tasting of the wine. And the straight sides means that the bouquet kind of travels up at a faster pace, and you just get more of the bouquet when you taste the wine. So I'm going to do the tasting this evening out of these Zalto glasses because I think they are so cool. And I've been selling them just kind of quietly. And then a fortnight ago, a customer over in that direction in Farnham who was buying some very expensive wine, expensive to me, so £80 a bottle. And he sent me a photo. He was so pleased of the wine he was drinking. He sent me a photo on WhatsApp. Mark, look at the wines. I'm really enjoying them. And the glasses were shameful. Yeah. And I thought, how can you drink? I've got to be careful here. He's not a member of the Selborne Wine Society, thank God. But anyway, he came in last weekend and he bought some of these Zalto glasses because I said, look, you've got to do justice to the wine you're buying. So this is more about glassware than it is about Italy. So here we go, the Bologna. Lazio, Roma. Look at the colour. That's a deep straw yellow. And it's only 2018.
And we introduced this wine about a year ago, and we just thought the bottle was quite cool. Haley, who runs the Overton shop, said, I can sell this wine. It's only $11.95. Let's embrace it. Let's tell people what the Bologna grape is all about. So you've got some in your glass now. I know you it's not the Zalto glass, but let's swirl it around. Ooh. You've got some sort of tangerine. You've got some marmalade on the nose there. A little bit floral. That's a lemon peel. You can sense the zest there. You sense it's going to be crisp. Is it going to be full? Is it going to be light? You just, the colour would indicate that it's going to be pretty flamboyant on the palate. I'm sure one of you two of you had a little sneak preview, so you already know what it tastes like. So it's very clean, isn't it? It's probably a little more delicate than you were expecting it to be. It's got a, you would say relatively high acidity. Those kind of tangerous and tangerine citrus peel notes still sort of, they're very present. No oak. This is just sort of stainless steel, fermented on the lees, left on the lees for sort of 6 to 8 months before bottling. And I would say that's probably a little too full bodied to have simply on its own. It does need a bit of food. And what am I thinking of? I'm thinking of a sort of guacamole, a little bit of avocado, some prawns that haven't been sort of heavily seasoned, perhaps even some potted shrimps. Utterly perfect with some potted shrimps. And hey, it's a Friday evening. Well, it's a Friday evening for you. I'm actually, I'm allowed to say that it's actually a Thursday evening for me. So I've got, I'm working Friday and Saturday, but anyway, hey, I have to do this for a living. It's quite tough, isn't it? So the Bologna grape is, for many of you, this will be the first time you've had the Bologna grape. It has been around for over 2,000 years. Even Pliny, in BC years, wrote about this grape, and he described it as uva fantastica. And it has quite a deep hue on the skin, hence the colour. It's a small grape. You get quite a lot of skin to juice ratio. Again, hence the deep colour, as opposed to lots of juice and very thin skins. This is the opposite. So this, in the sort of golden days of the European agricultural policy, this was not a good grape to grow in Italy, because it was all about volume, and the more volume you produce, the more subsidies you got from the European Union and the common agricultural policy. And now that's been pushed to the side, and now that gives room for the Bologna grape to come back and feature in people's vineyards, and because it is a low production grape, not a lot of juice, and hence the rather sort of concentration palate structure you have. This is made by a number of farmers. It's a sort of cooperative type of operation. There are 50 farmers that belong to this central winemaking, Cincinnato, just outside Rome. And I like that wine. We've bought it 3 times now. We've got a good load, so if you want to place lots of orders, there's plenty there in the warehouse. And I don't know anyone else who's selling this wine. And so at $11.95, we think that's a little cracker. And it's a kind of, yes, it's just light enough to have on its own, but it's got enough body and flavour to have that with a starter. And personally, I'm always looking for a grape variety that is not a Sauvignon Blanc and it's not a Chardonnay, and something a little bit different, but isn't too wacky on the palate. And anyway, wine number one. I hope you like it. Shall I show them my Italian wine map? Just to, I mean, you kind of know where Rome is, don't you? There you go. There's the Italian peninsula. And here's Roma. And just the area around it is Lazio. And we're quite close to the coast, south of Rome. And so that's where we are. This is my little PowerPoint production for you. So we'll have a little chat about that, and we'll look forward to getting into wine number two. Thank you.
Well, say, Mark, you're quite right. That is a nice little cracker there. I've got a couple of questions here for you, I'm afraid. Try and put you on the spot. So you mentioned about the yellow colour, very dark for a white, if that makes sense. Is any of that to do with the process, or is it something that is that grape gives you time after time?
A bit of both, Roger. There's no such thing as a completely white grape. Every grape will have a degree of pigment in the skin. And I love to use the example of Pinot Gris, which obviously means grey Pinot. And we sell a wine from the Mornington Peninsula, southeast of Melbourne, which is Pinot Gris on the skins. And it's a rosé wine. Or rather, it's ended up pink because it spent its entire fermentation process on the skins, and so all the color has come out of the grape skins, and has made the wine. It's supposedly a white grape, but it's ended up pink. And with the Bologna grape, it is, this is young, and you look at it and you think, well, if it was a Sauvignon, it'd be like 10 years old. And this is simply because the skin's quite thick, the grape is small. So if you leave the juice on the skins for a few extra days, you're going to get the color pigment from the skin into the wine. And it's not just the color, but it's you get a little bit of substance on the palate. It's just referring back to the Common Agricultural Policy. This would have been such an uncommercial grape to grow in the 1970s because the production would have been low. You've been far better off just pumping out the Pinot Grigio and sort of lots of Grillo grapes in Sicily. And thankfully, that is all history.
Well, that's funny enough, brings us on to the next question. So that's quite an interesting point you raised there, because I can remember my dad being in the wine trade, and the let's say the quality of the wine in those days was not as good as they are now. I think that's quite clear. So do you think with current changes coming up in the new year with Brexit, do you think that might affect the way people grow wine, or policy? How does policy affect wine to that extent at the moment?
Right. I think, firstly, I think the world of food subsidy is very much a backstory, and people will increasingly buy wine on quality and price. And there is a lot of fear. There's an awful lot of fear, not just about COVID, but about Brexit. And will we be able to export? Will we be able to import? What I sense is that there's a massive desire. I communicate directly with wineries and farmers around the world,
And there's a desire to sell and there's a desire to buy. And there's also a desire, may I say, from shippers and freight forwarders to put the wine on a boat in Adelaide and bring it into London. There's a desire. I use a European freight forwarder in Portsmouth called Freight Transport, and they want business, and there is a total desire to link the person who makes the wine to the person who sells it. And there's clearly a desire on my part to the person, to you, who drink it. And the only people who are going to slow that down are the politicians. And I think there will be some slowing down. There's no doubt about that. And but I haven't had any problem getting wine from A to B in the last 12 months. And hey, obviously I can't predict what's going to happen, but all around the sort of the production and the transport, there is desire. There is a desire to do business, and the only thing that people can do is to slow that down. So my wife, who's preparing some supper in the background at the moment, says, "Oh golly, you're the optimist, the ever optimist." But I don't think we will stop bringing good wine to Selborne.
Well, I'm sure that would be good news to Selborne, especially across all three levels, I have to say. So one last question here for you this time round. So obviously, I'm from Lower Selborne. You're quite right, Mark. This is the first time I've tried this grape, and it's a cracking grape. Is it popular in Italy and probably around Rome?
Well, I think, like all the sort of grape regions, the wine regions around Europe, they are very parochial, and they tend to drink the wine. They tend to drink the wine from the region, and you're more likely to walk into a wine merchant south of the M3 and find a bottle of Burgundy than find a bottle of Burgundy in Bordeaux. And so I wouldn't ever expect to find the Bologna grape for sale in Piedmont. I wouldn't ever expect to find it in Milan or Turin or Venice or Verona. But I'd expect to find it in Rome. And within Italy, I wouldn't expect to find it anywhere else.
Good answer. Good answer. So, right. Well, I think everybody, time to get if you haven't already, in fact, let's do a hands up. Who didn't touch the red wines before the tasting? Andy Roberts, put your hand down. I know that's not true. Put your hand down. Anyway, so if you can get the corks out of the first red and get things ready. Before we get going with that one, give you a bit of time to get your canapes ready. Obviously, the news over the last few days hasn't been great, and just wanted to really, on the bottom of the newsletters or the sign up, we always put the Selborne Village form, and it's there there's a fantastic group of volunteers who are there to help if needed through this current situation, and hopefully we are over the halfway mark with this. So it is there. Have a look. If anyone needs help, there's a fantastic great group of supporters there to give support where needed, and hopefully it won't be long before we, as Chris said at the beginning, all meet again. So Mark, we've got a lovely red. Trying to think which one we've got up next. It's the one that's the substitute, I believe, is it not?
Yeah, I think it's the Lanzerac.
The Lanzerac next. Okay. Great. So I know that this is the reason why I know that Andy Roberts would have had the cork out of that. He loves his South African wine. So shall we move on and let's see what we've got in store with the first red.
So welcome to our second wine. This is the wine that wasn't on our little preview. So I'm going to take you to South Africa for this Bordeaux blend from the Lanzerac estate just outside Stellenbosch. And we're talking about an estate that was first planted in 1692. Yeah, I mean, that's a long time ago. And this is where we kind of slightly lose our sense of language when we talk about the new world and the old world in the context of wine. And I almost prefer to talk about South Africa in old world terms, because before Suez Canal and all of that sort of business, ships were going round the Cape for hundreds of years, to get out to the Asian countries, and this is where they stopped off, and the climate was very European in style, and this is where you could grow similar crops, you could grow your grapes, and some lovely old architecture, 300-400 years old. And so when we talk about it's a new world wine, by which we mean sort of Chile, Argentina, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, just be careful, because there are vineyards in Europe that have just been planted for the very first time, and there are vineyards in South Africa that have been alive for 350 years. So this is an estate founded in 1692. I just thought I'd say that. So I'm going to use the Bordeaux glass from our friends at Zalto. They're expensive. But my first email this morning, I sometimes, if I can't sleep at night, which is frequent, I decide rather than toss and try and get back to sleep, I'll send a few emails. It irritates my wife, but I I wrote tasting note on a white Burgundy that I thought was utterly fantastic, that I bought yesterday. And so I was just polishing off the tasting note, and I thought, rather than put this on the website straight away, I'm just going to send this tasting note off to a few people. Time it so they don't think I'm completely mad, say that it arrives at 6:45 rather than 4:45, which is when I was writing the note. And my first email of the day, he had ordered a case of the wine and 6 of these Alto glasses. I thought at £34 a glass, I thought great. And a case of an Italian red. Zalto. Hey, this isn't a glass promotion, but I'm just so excited about these glasses because they really are transforming the pleasure I get out of wine drinking. So we have got a Bordeaux blend, by which I mean the grapes you grow in Bordeaux are Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, Petit Verdot, Malbec. You didn't know that? Malbec is originally from Bordeaux, southwest France. I know you associate it with Argentina, but actually originally it was grown in the Loire Valley, where it's known as Cotte. It's one of the minor grape varieties in Bordeaux, and then it's grown down in Mataron, just south of Bordeaux, and so this has been aged in wooden casks, old French oak casks. And I'm a great believer in blends. I'm a massive believer in blends. People sort of ask what my favourite grape variety is, and I kind of object to that question anyway. What's my favourite wine? And I have sort of seasons where you have a sort of bit of a thing on Pinot Noir. bit of a thing on Chardonnay. One thing that I'm always kind of evangelical about is Riesling. I just get excited about Riesling, partly because we're still waiting for the customer sort of awakening to the amazing things about Riesling. You can drink it dry, you can drink it sweet, you can drink it just a little bit off dry. So good with sort of prawn dishes and Asian dishes and spicy dishes. And anyway, that's but people, I don't think, fully appreciate the heritage of blends. And in Bordeaux, it's virtually unknown to have a single grape variety. You never get Cabernet Sauvignon entirely on its own. You occasionally get Merlot and Pomerol on its own. In Chateau Petrus, Chateau Le Pin, it's on its own, and it costs £400, £500 a bottle. But on the whole, you're blending the tannins, the thick skins, and the sort of deep currant flavours of the Cabernet Sauvignon with the more sort of damson, plum, fruit, early ripening, bit more juicy Merlot grape. Cabernet Franc has a bit more tannin again, a little more leafy on the palate. Then Malbec gives a bit of power, a bit of density, a bit of colour. And Petit Verdot is one you kind of virtually don't know, perhaps. That's like the sort of pepper. You know, when you sprinkle on pepper to just give a little bit of extra flavour, put in a little bit of Petit Verdot, and it just sort of expands it and gives a little bit of complexity. But the three main grape varieties in this wine are Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and Petit Verdot. So, a little bit of background there. Kind of smells like a Bordeaux, doesn't it? You've got the sort of leafiness, you've got the black currants on that. And it doesn't smell, again, doesn't smell too New World. It smells more Old World than it does New World. It's not going to be a fruit bomb. It's got some rusticity to it. Anyway, let's see what it tastes like. Yeah, it's a little bit rustic. You've got those tannins, haven't you? Wow. Side of your mouth, the gums, needs food. So make sure you've got a little block of cheese there. You've got some Ardennes pâté or whatever you eat down in Selborne. This kind of assumes you're not very vegan. That's not an impolite thing to say. It kind of assumes you kind of have a varied diet. So obviously I don't have my beef, I don't have my horseradish, my baked potato with a bit of garlic butter in it. There you go, there's another menu choice for you. I want to take that home and just have that. I don't know what's on the menu when I get home, but I'll be very happy with some Newlands pork sausages, some onion marmalade, some buttered baked potato, and some kind of roasted kale. That's what everyone does these days. You buy your kale and you throw in some olive oil and you put it in the oven. I'm sure that's got down as far south as Selborne as well. But I'll be very happy with that, and a glass of the Lanzerac Bordeaux blend. And I hope you like that too. £12.95. I mean, it's a joke, isn't it? I mean, can you buy a Bordeaux that good for £12.95? I don't think so. This is one we have to ship. We have to ship ourselves, where Caviste belongs to... it's like a kind of private buying group where we're all shareholders, and stretching from Scotland down to Cornwall. It's about 35 members, and every week we kind of ship together from all over the world And it just means that, we can be exclusive to a degree. We don't have to buy individually, sort of pallets at a time, something that does muck up your cash flow in this business, because look at all this stock, it has to be financed. And so if we can share, I'll do half a pallet of Lanzerac at a time rather than a full pallet, and it just helps with the cash flow. And I know that the wine will never appear in Waitrose or Sainsbury's or Majestic, because we have our own arrangement with the producer, so that gives us some reassurance on that level. And so the whole business of buying wine and the raison d'etre for an independent wine merchant, it's been really a very exciting last 6 months. More people buying locally, and we're selling more wine, and we've seen many more faces, and there's a lot of people who are actually buying into the adventure of wine, which is our strapline for the Cavis logo. Anyway, I hope you're enjoying that Lanzerac. Do make sure you've got some good kind of full flavoured food to enjoy with it, and thank you very much.
Wow, thanks, Mark. I think one of the things I've learned from these last 4 tastings where it's been virtual and we've had the opportunity to put the menu to the wines probably more than we'd be able to in the village hall, is how much difference the food choice makes to the taste of the wine, and also how it improves the taste of the food. And Ardenne pate, I've had some real love from Adi about how the Manchego went down with that. The Ardenne pate really caught that. So that is a lovely wine. So in terms of one question that's popped up is, in terms of this wine having that Bordeaux link, are there any wines do you think might compare to a Bordeaux? And that's come from Adi. What might this wine compare to in Bordeaux?
Right. I think it's quite interesting if people ask me where the best spots for Pinot Noir are, which is a more frequent question I'm asked, rather than the Bordeaux blend. And I mean, I can just run you through where the best Bordeaux blends that I've had. I think South Africa's pretty. Anyone who's been down to South Africa, you move around and it goes from you get some Bordeaux blends that are quite soupy, and sort of overcooked, and those that are quite Bordeaux-like. I'm going to name some other spots. In New Zealand, Hawke's Bay. It's not just the coastal climate there, but it's also the soil. They've got very deep gravel soils, almost identical to the type of soil you get in the Medoc and in the Grave to the south of Bordeaux. I'm going to add to that Margaret River. Margaret River is able to make wines that are much more Bordeaux-like than you would encounter in South Australia. Interestingly, in Victoria, which is further south than South Australia, Melbourne is a good sort of few hundred kilometers south of Adelaide. We bring in some wine from the Yarra Valley, which is quite a cool spot, and you get some amazing rich but not overcooked Bordeaux blends from the Yarra Valley, and I'll stop there.
Right. You stopped rather bluntly there, Mark. That nearly caught me out.
Well,
So
my wife says I talk too much.
she's probably right. Wives always are, aren't they? But there we go. So a very simple question from Lower Selborne. How many bottles in a pallet? We obviously do the stack 'em high, sell 'em cheap down this end. So we don't muck about with these odd half dozen bottles. You know, it's
Yeah, it varies, and I'm not an asymmetrical person, and there is no finite answer. But a very simple equation is 600 bottles to a pallet. So that's 100 boxes of 6. Increasingly, we're dealing with 6-bottle cases. And but then if I'm shipping wine from Australia, I've got a shipment that's left Adelaide about a fortnight ago, and you can follow it online. I mean, it's really sad, but I do every 5 days. I will see where my shipment is in the Indian Ocean, and when it hits the Suez Canal, I find it quite exciting. And I've got a shipment coming in from New Zealand at the moment, and some of you who subscribe to our newsletter would have got something about Hans Hartzog, who's an incredible and completely wacky producer that hasn't been in the UK for a few years. And so I've sort of held up my hand and said, look, I will bring in the wines of Hans Hartzog. And so we sent out an email today. Hey, I'm not answering questions. I'm straying from your question. So stop that. 600 bottles to a pallet, but you can do 14, 32, 64 dozen. So I've got 2 pallets of 64 times 12 coming in from Adelaide, and from 3 different producers. Champagne are bigger bottles, that's a smaller one. So you get the idea, don't you, Roger?
I do. Enough to keep us going for a short while. Mark, that was a cracking wine, and I know that has probably raised the expectation for the finishing session. And I'm off to wave a bit of rump steak at the grill, and to go alongside.
Well done.
Take forward your recommendation. So, thank you very much, Mark. Right, everybody, we're going to take the short break so that you can do whatever you need to do and get those canapes ready for the last wine. And I hope you're enjoying the evening, and we will be back in 10 minutes. Thank you very much.
Bullseye.
Welcome back, everybody, and we're ready for the final wine. And this is your chance to get the cork out and let it breathe just that little bit more. Those of you that haven't already opened it. So, two things. I've got a couple of bits for you, Mark. Mark, over the last tastings and in view of this current, I think the word that gets branded around is unprecedented period of time that we've gone through over the last month, we've been asking our presenters, how has the lockdown and the general world situation affected you? And where do you see things moving maybe in the future? So I'm going to throw that one at you, but any thoughts on that?
My thoughts change. I mean, on whatever it was, March the 23rd, we closed both our shops, and that didn't happen with quite a high degree of emotion and not fear. I just sort of kind of apprehension, and what's going to happen. And our website was looking good, but it accounted for about 5% of our turnover, and it was a little kind of a necessary bit of decoration in the background. Within a week, it was doing 65% of our turnover, and we were selling 30% more wine than we were with our shops open. And we had to close our website for 24 hours soon after, because it didn't quite melt down, but it was, people wanted to drink wine. And and then it's been much harder post lockdown than during lockdown. During lockdown, 3 months, it was, we just ran a mail order company. The shops, we mothballed Overton. We turned Newlands into a packing centre, and we were paying large amounts of cash to DHL. We got through 3 years worth of cardboard in 6 months, and then, but how to open the shop with your masks and all of that's been difficult. But we've still been selling wine, and I've been saying, people ask me the whole time. I think we're having our best September ever, and I think September is actually, in commercial terms for the wine merchant, one of the sort of darkest months of the year, because all the younger people have come back from holiday. They've spent more money than they should have done. The posh ones then have to fork out for school fees, and then the older people. I guess I'm almost one of those now. Then the older people disappear on holiday, so they're gone, and no one's doing any of that, and so people actually continuing to live quite well during September, which is good news. And but at a slightly more profound level, I think people are discovering, this is why I'm in business. Going back to the start, I love flavor, I love variety, I love stories, and people do. They've got more time, and they've got more focus on what happens at home, and they're taking more time over their food, and they are taking more time over their wine, and it's it is an extraordinary time. But Roger, I'm talking with you. You're in the hospitality industry, and it's quite different. I think it'd be good for them to hear from you. I was having a long glass of wine with someone on Tuesday evening who he owns and runs 8 luxury hotels in the south of England, and he's he's at 100. Well, he's at 100% capacity. He's been 100% capacity for the last 3 months, but he was at zero capacity for the previous 3 months, and so one is cancelling out the other, and um, the world of hospitality is, it's a storm pot at the moment. And Roger, I think it'd be quite good for the members to hear a little bit about you, because if I'm allowed to ask that, because it hasn't been easy, has it?
No, you're quite right. You're quite right there, Mark. It hasn't been easy, and it's very up and down, and it is very much at the behest of the next announcement from the government. To be honest, it really does change day to day. But and one press conference can have a dramatic effect on your future bookings. But hey, we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about you, Mark. So I'm going to swiftly move that one on. And I have got an incredibly important question here for you before we get into the last wine from the Murphys, who are compatriots of myself in Lower Selborne. Do Zalto do beer glasses?
They do.
They do.
So that's a very yes/no question. And if the next question is, can I buy beer glasses from you? That's another yes/no question. Yes.
Right. Well, that's one aimed at the Murphys. So the Murphys will be down to see you for your Zalto beer glasses that will make beer taste even more like heaven. Anyway, right. Moving on. Well, so here we go with the final wine, which I have to say I have been looking forward to. I can smell the steak in the room next door. I've got to go there. So, anything you'd like to add, Mark, before we move on?
Are you going to be? Am I going to be chatting a little bit after the next wine?
I'm afraid so.
No, that's fine. I think it's time for the Primitivo grade.
I think it's time to unleash the Primitivo.
So, hello again, and welcome to our third wine, which is the Primitivo from Puglia, which is on the heel of Italy. We'll show you the Italian map in a moment. And this is quite a biggie, 14.5%. As I said in my little preview video, it's organic, so you can, drink as much as you like, and it'll be good for you. So pouring it into my Zalto Bordeaux glass, and just let that breathe for a bit. Just stir it around. Oh, that's amazing. Just smell that. Oh, it's sort of kind of dark chocolate and spice. You sort of buy these sort of fancy chocolates if you kind of go into a Waitrose type of place, and you have your sort of your sort of lint display. And you know how you have your dark chocolate and they're kind of infused with spice and blueberries and things like that. This reminds me kind of one of those sort of dark chocolates infused with dark berries and spice. That's what I'm getting on the nose, and I haven't even tasted it yet. The wine world is full of stories, and my parents-in-law, they live in southwest Scotland, and we don't go up there as much as we should. We haven't actually been there since the beginning of March, and my, they live quite a sort of quiet life on the Solway Firth, and I come up with my sort of stories from work, and which causes my father-in-law great amusement. And he says, "Mark, you must write a book of all the stories you've got from the customers." And but I had one yesterday, and there are stories that are really sad, and there are stories that are happy, and there are stories that are funny, and sometimes there are stories that are funny and sad at the same time. So let me tell you a story from yesterday while we just let the Primitivo breathe for a while. But we've got an upstairs here, and I try and lose myself upstairs for a bit, because you know how customers can get in the way of a good day's work. And so Paul, working downstairs, was quite busy, and he was trying to protect me, and so, "Is Mark here? Is Mark here?" And this chap had come in, called Jamie. That's his real name. There are a few Jamies in Hampshire, so I don't think that's giving away too much data. And he says, "Oh, I've got this bottle of vintage port that my mother wants to sell." And Paul was trying to sort of handle it himself and not kind of pull me from my work upstairs. And I sort of sensed that discussion was going on. And then the next thing that happened was Paul was upstairs getting a bucket and a mop. And I said, "Paul, what have you broken?" I said, "Well, I haven't broken anything, but the customer who came in to sell this bottle of 1977 vintage port has dropped it on his way out of the shop. He got, opening the door and removing the mask and all of that, and he had the bottle of port inside the wooden box, and the top came off the wooden box, and it just fell on the floor." I thought, "Oh no, poor chap, he must be in tears." And so I thought, "I got to go down and just sort of say hi." And so I came down, and he was very sort of kind of cheerful about it, and it was his mother's precious bottle of vintage port. This is more sad than happy. It's certainly, yeah. And I saw the label, and I said, "Oh, I'm really sorry. That's not, I don't think that's one of the most expensive ports from the vintage. It's not the sort of Manchester United, Liverpool. It's more like a Norwich City. I apologise if you support Norwich City, but it's tough." And there's let's just have a look on the wine searcher website, price, etc. And he was looking at my shoulder. "Oh no, it's worth that amount of money." And I said, "Oh, I'm really sorry. I'm so sorry." And anyway, we kind of sort of learned how to laugh about it. And I wasn't very clever, because I just said, "And the really sad news about it is that Paul, who's been working away to clear up the glass and not, I've got to invoice you for £50 for his time." And I thought that was pushing it. And but anyway, that's my story from yesterday. And what was interesting, what also came out of the box, was this sort of porcelain container of Stilton cheese. Heaven knows how old that Stilton cheese was, but we didn't open that, nor did I offer to buy it. But hey, that was a sad story. That wasn't very sad. I shouldn't be laughing, but that's another one for the wine archives. Shall we get back to the Primitivo? So here we're on the opposite coastline. Shall we look at our Italian map? And so there's Roma, and we're disappearing down to Puglia. Here we are. So there's the toe. Here's the heel, and so we're on the heel, and it kind of feels very hot down here, doesn't it? I mean, you're kind of, Piedmont and Verona and Venice and Turin and Milan, all in the north, and they're not exactly cold, are they? They can get a little chilly. So here it gets quite hot, but actually you've got these lovely sort of sea breezes that are coming off the of the Adriatic Sea here. And but Primitivo is an interesting one. It's kind of only come into our language and our sort of wine drinking repertoire relatively recently, but actually we've been drinking it for quite a few years in the form of Zinfandel, because Primitivo really is the same genetic makeup as Zinfandel that came over in the mid-19th century to the west coast of America, and actually originated, just because it was so clever with our sort of data mapping and carbon dating and stuff, we think it originated in Croatia, where it was called something that I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce. And from Croatia, it came over to the foot of Italy, where it became Primitivo, and then with all the European migrants to America, there it became Zinfandel. And but here we are, the world of Primitivo, back to our sort of dark chocolate spice. You've got the tannin again, haven't you? But you've got this wealth of fruit that almost overwhelms the tannin, so you can almost say this is a bit of a fruit bomb. You're definitely not going to have this on its own in front of the television. Nor would I say you want that at a high temperature, because it is quite alcoholic. I've been telling you it's 14.5. I'm just going to double check that. Yes, it is. And there's your little organic symbol. So no chemicals used in this wine. It's 2019. So it's young. You know, it's kind of barely a year old. So what am I going to eat with that? Well, I mean, this is your if you're a meat eater, you know, this is your big steak. You know, this is this kind of last barbecue of the summer. You know, this is with your Stilton sauce. Have you tried? Google Stilton sauce with your beefsteak. I tried it for the first time about 4 months ago, and you need double cream, you need your Stilton, you need to sort of slice up your shallots and kind of brown them and reduce them and stuff, and you just sort of stir it with some pepper, and you get some brandy, stir that again, and have that with your steak. It's a bit of a sort of, you know, kind of calorie fest. So you need to go for a good kind of one of those hill runs you have in Selborne, up and down those lovely hills. The following day, once you've had your glass of Primitivo, your steak, and your Stilton sauce. Pause, smell, drink. It's good, isn't it? It's really good. We in our Everton shop, because at £12.95 this is kind of such an easy wine to sell. He's no longer working for us, but our sort of assistant part-time manager there. We kind of had to put an embargo. We said, you know, we're gonna give you a prize if you can go through a whole day without selling this wine, because he'd think, oh, I'll have the Primitivo, because he just knew that the customers would adore it. And we had to sort of say, no, you need to give them, you know, go for a French wine, go for a Spanish wine, go for a Portuguese wine, and we're not going to allow you to make this your wine of choice for every single customer, because he liked this wine so much. But anyway, it is an easy wine to enjoy, and yeah, we sell lots of it. £12.95, including VAT. And so, cheers. Thanks very much. Enjoy the wine.
Mark, that didn't disappoint. That was an absolute cracker, especially with the steak. The steak went down a treat with that. Well done. Thank you.
Marvellous. What? Can you raise your glass again, please, Roger? What on earth is that?
Mark, don't start your sales technique on me now, okay? I shall be in with the Murphys for the beer glasses, if you remember earlier. So don't start your sales technique. Right, got a couple of questions for you. Let's see it right. You're going to pay for that. I'm going to take you back, actually, going back to the Murphys, my friends from Lower Selborne. They threw a question in on the last one, which I didn't get round to, but actually it really kicked in with this one as well. Is that the meat and the pate and the cheese really sorted out the tannins in the red wines? Why is that? Why is it that wine tastes so different when you put it with a meat like that or a cheese like that? You're not laughing now, are you, eh?
Yeah. No, you know, I always there are so many angles to this question, and and it affects the wines that I choose for if I'm doing a wine tasting for, say, a wine society, and at what time of day that I'm doing it. It is because if a wine tasting is going to start in the evening at 8 o'clock, 8 p.m., and people are arriving having had their supper, essentially their palate is going to be pretty decimated. And there are regions that I now refuse to talk on at 8 o'clock in the evening after supper. And I will never talk on Burgundy at 8 o'clock. I will never talk on the Loire Valley because, people have eaten. And the more delicate flavors of cool climate Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Cabernet Franc that you get in the cooler regions of France, it's just it's not worth doing, and it doesn't give the wines justice. And there's a little phrase in the wine trade that you buy on an apple and you sell on cheese. As in the acids of an apple are quite kind of angry towards wine, and so if a wine can taste good when you've had an apple, it must be a good wine, and the lactose, that's the crucial thing. Everyone talks about a wine and cheese party. Why do we talk about a wine and cheese party? Because the lactose in cheese actually is like a magnet to the tannins in a wine. And so if you've got a virgin palate and you haven't had any food and you drink a cool climate, full-bodied red wine and it's laced with tannin, you think, well, that wine doesn't taste very nice. But if you have it with a nice Somerset cheddar, and the cheddar, the lactose is absorbing the tannins, and so you're not tasting the tannin, you're tasting the fruit. And when you take into account that in traditional France, how often do you just see people drinking a glass of wine on its own, a glass of red wine on its own? Very rarely. It's always with food. And I find that if I'm doing a wine tasting for a wine society or a group that have already had their food, they've already had their dinner, they maybe even had a pudding, then really the regions you can show are warm climate Spain, southern France, Australia, Chile, Argentina, and then inland Cape, South Africa. And the wines will show well. But anything that's cool climate is going to taste light, it's going to taste tannic, it's going to taste thin. But if you ask me to do a tasting on cool climate wines at the start of an evening before supper, 6 o'clock, 6:30, 7 o'clock, then Burgundy, Loire Valley, coastal South Africa, cool climate New Zealand. I don't know if I'm answering your question at all, but you're just getting the context between food and how food interacts with wine, the time of day. If I'm doing a serious tasting at work and I'm buying wine, I will only taste between 10 o'clock and 12:30. So after breakfast, before lunch. And that's when my palate is most alive and I can really kind of read a wine in its entirety without too many flavors coming into play.
Mark, I think you dodged a bullet there and got a very, very good answer. I think that covered everything, really. So thank you for that. I have got another couple of questions. I'm going to try and catch you out still.
Okay.
No, I wouldn't do that to you. I wouldn't do that to you. We've had 3 wines tonight from 3 obviously fantastic producers that you've recognised. How do you find your producers? Because with all the hundreds of thousands around the world, how do you find these producers that bring these wines to your shop?
I wish there was an easy way to answer that question, and there is no finite answer. There's. I think there are these layers of wine selection, and let's start with, you start with categories. It would be unforgivable for a customer to walk into a caviste store and say, I want to buy a Chablis between 12 and 20 pounds a bottle. And if I say I don't have one, I mean, that's like, it's like walking into a supermarket and say, I want to buy some bread. Oh, we don't have any bread. But I can sell you some oat crackers. So we will try and buy the best Chablis we can between 12 and 20 pounds a bottle. Claret, you can't walk into a shop and say, I want a Bordeaux. I said, we don't have Bordeaux. It's out of season. So there are things that you've kind of got to have. And because people, they want a Malbec now, they want a Sauvignon. And you'll try and do the best you possibly can. And it may be an importer, you may buy it direct. But let me tell you a couple of stories. Someone who I know has been banging on to me a while about a Portuguese producer who was looking for placement within the UK, having lost their importer a couple of months back, and I wasn't paying much attention. And such was her persistence that I kind of woke up one morning and I found, I hadn't been reading my emails, my texts or anything, and suddenly realized that without really me stopping something, I had an appointment that day for this Portuguese importer who had come over from Portugal with a case full of samples and was going to come to the Newland shop at some point that day. And I had two options, either 12:30 or 2:30. And I thought, I don't know what's going on. And so I said, okay, well, come in then. I didn't have much time, but I'll taste your wines. And I had no time. And she came in and with these wines from Lisboa, which is a region kind of not represented in the UK. It's a very historical region, just north of Lisbon, just to the northeast of Lisbon, and with its own history. And I started tasting through about 7 or 8 of their wines. And privately, in my head, I was utterly captivated by these wines. And but I didn't want to sort of kind of give the game away, because I didn't want her to get excited that I was going to say yes to all these wines. And I realized that actually I was the only, she'd come over from Portugal, and I was the only, I was the only person who was going to be tasting these wines. And she said, I'm going to leave these with you and you can share them with your staff. And I showed them to Haley, who's the manager in Overton, and I really didn't want to sell them to her. I just said, look, I've got these wines, taste them. I'm not going to say anything about them at all. And I did the same with our new manager over at Newlands. Taste them. And they were utterly captivated by them. And I said, well, we've got an opportunity, the only people who are bringing this wine into the UK. And so, some of these things are accidental. But no one's going to come into the Newland shop saying, I have to buy some wines from Lisboa, which is a sort of historic, tiny little region to the northeast of Lisbon. But I've said, yes, I'm going to do that. And but that's part of our uniqueness, and that's part of our privilege. I've got, another example, champagne. It's easy to kind of buy Bollinger. It's less easy to be competitive on it because so many people are doing it. The fun is trying to find your own producer. And we've been importing a small producer who's kind of good, but sort of their latest shipment isn't quite as good as the previous one. And I've been trying out 1 or 2 other champagnes recently. And I had a visitor whose palate I respect at lunchtime today. And I had a meeting with him and I said, let me pour you a glass of champagne, something we're looking at. And we're trying to get a really, really fantastic champagne, which we can sell at under £30 a bottle. And again, not trying to overplay it. And he said, Mark, this is a great champagne. This is as good as Bollinger. And I said, well, I can sell this for under £30 a bottle. And so, Roger, I'm again not answering your question very neatly. But these things happen by accident, they happen by plan. Sometimes I bring wines into the UK almost out of protest. A few years back, I was disturbed that no one was bringing in the wines of a historic Australian estate called Yarra Yering. And I said, this is appalling. And I said, someone's got to bring this wine into the UK. It's part of Australians' heritage. And so I did that for about 3 years. But they were upset that I wasn't getting the wine into London restaurants because that's not my bag. And so I've got a joint arrangement now with a wine importer who specializes in sort of smart restaurants inside the M25, and we kind of do it together. Today, we sent out a newsletter Hans Hartzog. There's absolutely no commercial reason for us to be selling the wines of Hans Hartzog. But again, his wines haven't been in the UK for 3 or 4 years, and I had an opportunity to, with a few other wine merchants, I've brought in the the major share of this New Zealand producer, who's completely funky, completely unique, and I think needs to have his wines in the UK. So again, I've kind of done that. Uh, um, uh, no one's lives are going to be upset if I didn't have the wines of Hans Hartzog, but it's fun. And I've been talking now for probably about 15 minutes, and it's almost time for bed, so I'll shut up.
Well, you certainly answered the question, Mark. So well done. Well done again. I'm going to leave you with a quick one now, as they say, Mrs. AD has asked an off-field one about, and I always remember this from when my dad had his business in the 70s. It was always a dozen. Everything was a dozen. When did the half dozen come in with the 6 bottles in a case, and why?
Oh, because we are weaklings. We are fading people. We are not as macho as we once were, and we can't lift the weights that we used to. And we've got this category inside the workplace called health and safety, HEALTH. I think that's how you spell health. Safety, SAFETY. And if we don't comply with it, we get put in prison. So a case of wine is 18 kilograms. A case of champagne goes up to about 22, 23 kilograms. And so we just need to protect ourselves. I think that's the main reason, really. And half a case is 10 to 12 kilograms. And Roger, we're blokes from an old place where people used to be strong, and we're no longer strong. So and we've become very protective of our backs and our limbs. And am I answering your question?
AD's question, you have.
Amy's question, yeah.
My dad had slave labour as a 14-year-old. I used to be lumping his 12-bottle cases around. So that sounds about right. Mark, it's been a fantastic evening and 3 fantastic wines, I have to say. And you did finish with a blockbuster. So can I pass it over to you to just finish off the evening from your side? If there's anything you want to say to why you've got around about 70 members sitting out there listening and watching, to finish off. And it's been the end of a great season. But Mark, do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, I'm just really grateful. I'm grateful to you, Roger. I'm grateful to Nick, who's done the filming for this evening, and to Jessica, who's been in support, and to Ian, who sends me an email in February, and I'll reply to it briefly. He'll send me one in May, which I don't reply to. He sends to me another one in June, which I may reply to. I just want to thank you all. I think my relationship with Selborne, you told me earlier, goes back to 2003, and it's a very special place, historically, geographically, and I think the people, you'll never invite me back again, but you're quite a crazy crowd, really. I mean, just go back to the start of the evening. I mean, you're a bunch of lunatics, really, aren't you? But it was fun, and it's the only wine society that I've ever been to, and I've been to many where I've played my guitar and I've sung. And you're just a good crowd, and I think of Adi,
who he's probably the first member I met going back to when I took the crazy step of leaving safe employment with Berry Brothers and joined. I mean, it was just a joke. One desk, one chair, one computer, a 1 bar electric heater in the middle of winter, and I thought that was my future. And hey, I'm still here. But yeah, AD was really one of the first customers of this new business who came over from Selborne all the way to Overton, which was our only shop. And I just want to say, a big thank you to you, AD, and your wonderful family. And others have come, and I sell wine to you all throughout the year. And it'd be difficult because if I started naming everybody else, I'd be leaving out other names. But you know who you are, and occasionally I have to drive through Selborne to get to the land the other side in West Sussex and Petersfield, and I always think, what a wonderful place you all live in, and you're very lucky to be there. And funny enough, I was serving a customer today at Newlands who said, she bought some bottles and said, I used to live in Selborne, and I used to go along to that wine society and used to speak there a few times, and I really miss that. And I said, I've never met anyone who's left Selborne. I've only met people who've moved there, and they never leave it because it's such a special place. And I said, well, I did leave it, and I now live in Farnham. But that's the only example I've known of anyone who's left Selborne. You are, just to remind you all what a special place you live in, and I'm very grateful for the invitations that you've given to me. And so it's 10 to 10, and we've all had too much Primitivo. So I better say, hand on back to Roger.
Well, that, apart from questioning my sanity, Mark, that wasn't quite the answer I was looking for. That was very good. But do you want to do a quick one-line take on the offer to people that want to buy wine?
I see. Right, there we go. Now I'm embarrassed. Roger, what you're asking for is that there is. Did you get an email from me, Roger, earlier in the evening?
I only reply to emails like you, Mark. So 2 months later.
Well, look, there's Roger, once he opens his computer in the morning, will find an email with a link that goes through to the Selborne September tasting selection. And that includes the 3 wines you've had this evening and 1 or 2 others. And you key in a code and you get some discount. And but if you come into the Newlyn shop and you sort of say, that'll be on the email as well. I forget what I say. It'll be the Selborne Wine Society thinks your wines are fantastic. If you say that inside the Newlyn shop, then you get a full 10%, not just on the tasting wines, but you get it on anything in the shop other than spirits and sort of bin ends and amazingly discounted wines. So there's an offer out there. You can either just sit lazily at home and go click with our offer code and get your discount, or you can drive up north of Alton to our farm shop and say how amazing our wines are, and you'll get a bit more additional discount. Is that what you wanted me to say, Roger?
That's what I was looking forward to say, Mark. So fantastic. So everybody's heard it now. It's out there. And so everyone will be getting their passports out so we can go the other side of Alton.
Yeah, it's a strange place. It's sort of, it's SW20 north of Alton. It's quite crowded up there.
Right. Fantastic. Right. Well, it wouldn't be the same without asking our old mucker in for the last tasting. And, here he is. Here he is. Last evening. Firstly, thank you to Mark for a wonderful tasting, a grand finale, for this year. And also thank you to Nick. Whilst I know he was stiff-armed a little bit by trying to look after his new his father-in-law to be, what he has produced over the last few months, as Chris said, has produced something more than I think we were expecting, or more than we thought we could deliver. So thank you, Nick. That is very heartfelt, and I know that most of you won't know that Nick is actually sort of fallen in love with Selborne a little bit, and is moving into the area. And so hopefully in the new year, when we all get to, or before, as we will soon hear, you will get the chance to meet Nick as well. So anyway, I'm going to pass you over to Ian, who Ian, here we go, our last finale, and couple of bits from Ian.
Quite proud of that.
Right. Can you hear me? Fantastic. Right, well, we'll do the same without asking. Ian, you're watching the YouTube. Yes. Everybody, here's where the bit we get a lag. We get a lag between one and the other for this. Okay. Right, Ian, I'm afraid you're watching the YouTube video, which hasn't quite worked. So just to give you a bit of technical speak there, everybody, what you see, we have said 30 seconds before. Unfortunately, I think Ian might be watching the wrong link. So anyway, we are, just to update on what Chris said earlier, we are in discussions with the Wakes. There are thoughts of whether we can do a formal, socially distanced, safe, outside tasting on the 14th of November this year. Saturday night, it will involve a 3-course dinner, some wine, of course, because it's Selborne, and we're in the early days of trying to put that together. Obviously, it depends what happens in this strange world of ours over the next few weeks, but we just feel that it would be nice to try and get everybody together that want to be together, even if it is outside in a marquee in November, because we are Selborne and because we are the Selborne Wine Society. So fingers crossed we can do that. We will be updating you more in the newsletter and in follow-up emails. But yeah, fingers crossed we can meet and say hello before the end of the year. Otherwise, it's going to be 2021 before we can get going. So, right, that leaves me to nothing more but to raise a glass. And from Lower Selborne, there's only one thing I can do. So there we go. Get the glass the right way. And thank you everybody for your support over the last few months. And please, please, please keep safe with the current news. I know things aren't good, but let's keep safe. And we look forward to seeing everybody in the new year. And particular thanks to Mark. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.